Deportiva y con swing.
Deportiva y con swing.
La factoría del deporte desde New York para ti. Es una máquina.
Es una máquina
Pensada para ti.
pensada para ti. Número uno en las redes, dale like y compartir.
Con informaciones importantes siempre frescas.
Y con entrevistas que te ponen de cabeza.
Lo mejor del
Managing General Partner, Hal Steinbrenner with us. Hal, thank you for giving us some time. Meredith, you have the first question. Please unmute.
Hal, when you look at the body of work from this team so far this season, what frustrates you the most?
The inconsistency, particularly of the offense and, you know, the base pad performance. But I mean, the offense, it's perplexing. It really is.
A couple days ago, Brian Cashman gave a vote of confidence to the coaching staff. Do you still believe that you have the right staff in place to lead this team?
Absolutely. Yeah. Look, everybody on the coaching staff has dealt with these players in the past. We've had some great offenses and some great teams. So, and, you know, nobody's working harder than the coaches. And, you know, the players, the most important thing to me always, any given year, is that the players respect the coaches, believe in the coaches. And that's absolutely the case here.
We go next to Eric Boland. Eric, please unmute.
Hal, when you look at things organizationally, do you feel that there's any need to reevaluate where a lot of the emphasis has been placed? Obviously, you guys have gone all in on the analytics and performance science, et cetera, in recent years. Has it gone maybe too far in one direction, or just in terms of the organizational philosophy, you're good with how everything is right now?
Yeah, I am a big fan of the performance science. And as you pointed out, we are getting more and more into that, particularly down here in Tampa at our player development complex. But we still have a good balance, Eric. I mean, Cash understands that's where I want to be. I want to hear from the Tim Narings and the Jim Hendrys and the pro scouts. Pro scouting still very much a big part of every decision we make. And it's all about balance in life. That's the way I always have been, and that's the way I always will be. And Cash understands that.
Eric, you had a follow?
Yeah, you muted.
You said the importance of the pro scouts and the like. Do you feel, are you hearing that they have the same voice that they did 2, 3, 5 years ago?
I can only tell you, Eric, every decision we make, whether it's a trade, a potential trade, or a signing, they're part of the conversation. They're part of the conversation, and their opinions are every bit as important to me and Cash. And that's a question you can ask Cash next time you talk to him. Every bit as important as the analytic guys or anybody else. They're a big part of what we do here. It's the boots on the ground.
We go next to Marley Rivera.
Hi, Hal. Thank you for the time.
Hey.
Hal, how is it for you when most of the actions you do with your team tend to be constantly compared with your father, the proverbial, this is what the boss would do? How do you deal with that? How do you handle that?
I think I'm just used to it. I'm used to it. Look, I'm my own person. We all have pluses and minuses, strengths and weaknesses, and there's a lot of things that are different between my dad and I. There are also things that are similar. But I've just come to understand, and it's a very, to me, it's a very justified question to ever ask and to always ask. Because he was one of the greatest at what he did. And all I can do is do my best, be my own person, make the decisions in the way that I've always made decisions, and which is putting as much thought into a decision as possible, taking the time, if I have the time, to do just that. There's no doubt I'm a little less spur of the moment than he was in a lot of ways. But all I can assure everybody is I do my best. And it's a legitimate question to always ask. It never bothers me. I love the man. And, you know, he was the greatest, and it's just understandable. But how do I cope with it? I'm just used to it. It's part of the job, and it really doesn't bother me.
And Hal, after a tough loss like last night, what's your message to Yankee fans?
That we're going to keep plugging away. It was a tough loss. You know, very happy what I saw out of the offense the last couple games, particularly yesterday against an incredible pitcher. But that's a tough way. That's a tough way to lose it. But we're not going to get down. We've had tough losses before. we're going to continue to do everything we can to win, win, win.
We go next to Brendan Cuddy.
Hal, thanks for taking the time. Is this roster largely good enough to turn it around and make a playoff push, or do you expect Brian Cashman to really do some overhauling before the trade deadline?
Well, look, I think coming out of spring training, there was no doubt. I believe we had a championship caliber team. Now we've had some injuries. So the question you're asking is a little difficult to answer, because are we going to get Kluber back? Are we going to get Sevi back? Are we going to get some of these other guys back that are down? And if so, I mean, we need to get Kluber back. We need to get Sevi. I think we need to shore up our starting rotation a little bit better than it is right now. Losing Aaron Hicks was huge. It was not a good thing. But Cash is doing that right now as we speak. I mean, we do that every July, every June period as the trade deadline approaches. And if we feel that we need another piece that's going to take us over the top, that we're not quite good enough, then we're going to look seriously at that, as will I.
Are you willing to exceed the luxury tax threshold?
Yeah, let me answer this. This is not a question I get much because we're normally always over it. But although I have a small track record, I do have a track record. And the answer to the question is, any given year, there's a number of reasons it makes sense to be under that threshold. But if I feel we're not good enough, we need another piece to be the championship caliber team that we want to be and expect to be, then I'm going to seriously consider doing whatever I need to do. And I always use Tanaka's signing all those years ago as an example. We were under the threshold at the beginning of the season. We were not good enough. I knew we weren't good enough. And we went ahead and signed Tanaka and went right through this threshold. So hopefully I've answered your question. But yes, I would absolutely consider, if a piece comes up that I think is a good piece and that baseball ops thinks is a good piece and something we should do, I would absolutely consider doing it.
Go next to Pete Caldera. Pete, please unmute.
Hal, your general manager made a blunt assessment of the club, saying it's been unwatchable at stretches. And I'm just curious what your take has been watching this club, and if you felt similarly.
Pete, it's aggravating. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, I don't need to tell you that. It's absolutely aggravating, maddening. I mean, you choose the word. It is, and it has been tough to watch, and the players know that. This is not, they're better than this. This is not the product that we expect, and it's not the type of play that they expect themselves.
Go next to Joel Sherman. Joel, please unmute.
Hal, you mentioned, you said it's all about balance in life when you were talking about analytics to scouting, et cetera. Do you think you have a balanced team, or do you think you have a very unbalanced team that does one thing, and if that gets shut down, what kind of team do you actually have?
Well, if you look at the lineup, clearly we're pretty strong right-handed, right? So that's I wouldn't say we have the perfectly balanced lineup, but I think we've got, especially if we get Kluber back, we've got a good starting rotation. We all know we've got a good bullpen, although they've had their struggles of late here and there. And we've got a great lineup, albeit mainly right-handed. We've got a great lineup. So, but it's going to be hard. Joel, you've been doing this a lot longer than me. I mean, to have a perfectly balanced club in every way, shape, or form is not the easiest thing to do. It's what you strive for every offseason, but not the easiest thing to do.
Right, but this has been an issue for many years, right? Not one. Right-handed, unathletic, not particularly good on defense. It hasn't been a one-year thing, and the organization has continued to double down on this. Do you philosophically agree that this was the thing to double down on?
Well, that's a better question, Joel, for Cash than me. But you're asking me about balance. I would always prefer to be more balanced than not balanced. But the players we sign in the offseason, I mean, the pool of players is the pool of players. And, we go after the ones we feel are going to make the biggest impact. And, I'm sure if you ask Cash, there would be a number of things that we look at that might be slightly more important than whether or not that individual bats left or right. But that's a great question for him and the analytics and the pro scouting guys. And you talked to him enough. It's a good question for him. But I would prefer to always be balanced over not balanced. Yes.
Go next to Brian Hoke.
Hi, Hal. Thanks for taking the time. You spoke earlier about Aaron Boone and the coaching staff. What is your evaluation of Brian Cashman's job performance?
Look, Brian and I have been doing this a lot of years together. He's extremely intelligent. Like I said, he understands the deal when it comes to, relying on pro scouting, relying on analytics, but also building areas that all teams are building, like analytics, like performance science. We communicate very well. There's not much that happens without him running up by me first. He knows that's the way I want it. I think he's done a good job. This team that we put together, leaving spring training, was a very, very good team, and they just haven't played up to their potential that I believe they still have, of course, because it's essentially the same team, and I'm talking about the starting lineup that we had last year and the year before, and these aren't aging players. These guys are in their prime. They just haven't played up to their potential, and that's been the big problem. At least they haven't done it consistently.
Sweeney Murdy, please unmute.
Good morning, Hal. A lot of times when we get to talk to you after the season and we talk to you about playoff losses and why they happened, and maybe some flaws in the roster or different things in that regard each individual season. But I'm wondering now, how comfortable, what makes you comfortable with the evaluation process in the organization with your own players or players from outside the organization, decisions you made to acquire players or not acquire them? The evaluation process goes into that. Why are you still comfortable with how that's gone?
Because it's extremely comprehensive. I can't imagine another organization that goes through these processes in a more comprehensive way, Sweeney, than we do. And that means talking to everybody. That means examining the pros and cons to any potential trade, any potential signing. It's just comprehensive, and that's the way it needs to be. And that's the way it will remain.
And if I could follow up with you on the question that Marley asked you and the way you responded to about being compared to your father. You were a young fan at the time when he was making decisions, that the kind of decisions that fans ask you to make now. I'm wondering what your reaction was when those were happening, how it affected you, and did it impact your style of leadership to the point where you are shying away from those kinds of decisions?
What kind of decisions, Sweeney?
The decisions to fire people in season and make bold statements, things like that.
Yeah, look, he certainly did that a lot. I think what people forget is it oftentimes didn't help, didn't work. And oftentimes, quite frankly, he was criticized for it, right? So I'm just a believer in seeing an entire body of work from an employee, regardless of what department they're in. And we do that year to year to year. And every year, even if somebody's in the middle of a contract, at the end of the year, I'm going to look at their performance and I'm going to make a decision whether to continue with that person or not continue with that person, regardless of whether or not they're under contract. But doing it knee-jerk reaction to appease this person or that person in the middle of the year when I really don't think there's a problem, that's certainly something I'm not going to do.
Thank you, Hal.
Go next to Bob Clappish. Bob, please unmute.
Hey, Hal.
Hey, Bob.
Can you hear me? Are we good?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to sort of double down on Sweeney's question. Well, first of all, my first question is, why did you pick today to do an interview with us? Because you speak publicly so rarely. And my second question is, I don't think it's a stretch of the imagination to think that by now your father would have fired Aaron Boone and maybe even Cashman too, in a peak of anger. So the second part of the question is, emotionally, are you angry at what you're seeing at the underperformance? And has there been even a fleeting moment where you thought a change of manager would help? So the first part is, why are you here today? Yep. And second of all, is there any part of you that is reacting emotionally to what you see in the standings?
Yeah, Bob, as Joel knows, and Eric and a few other people, I normally meet with all you guys at the owners' meetings. And the owners' meetings were 3 weeks ago. And obviously, because of COVID, we could not do that. So I had told David off 3 weeks ago we'd do it around July 1, mid-season. And then I told the same thing to Joel a couple of weeks ago as well. So this is normally something that happens 3-4 times a year at the owners' meetings. And then normally once in spring training too, face-to-face. So that's the answer. It just seemed like a logical time, July 1. And that was the plan as of the last few weeks. The second question is, am I mad at what I see? Absolutely. I'm aggravated, frustrated, angry, but that's not going to push me into a knee-jerk reaction to get rid of somebody that I believe the players respect, want to play for, want to win for, and overall has done a good job keeping that clubhouse together through this difficult 3 months.
Okay, thanks.
Tyler Kepner, please unmute.
For doing this, to sort of build off the last couple of questions.
Hey, Tyler, we're having a hard time hearing you.
Oh, sorry. To build off the last couple of questions, what do you think that stability does for the organization? Obviously, it's been very stable under you, not a lot of changes. What does that stability accomplish with this franchise?
Well, I'd like to say it accomplishes winning world championships. I mean, that obviously hasn't happened the last few years. But again, not afraid to make changes, as we saw with the manager a few years ago. But the changes have to be made for more than just the sake of making changes, Tyler. I mean, I know I'm stating the obvious, but again, I'm going to be looking at everybody's performance at the end of the year throughout the organization, baseball ops or not. And that's what I do every year. And, you know, it's not something I tend to do in the middle of the year. Do I like consistency? Do I having the same people around that I am used to, that I communicate well with, that we can kind of understand each other? Yes. But not if that person, not if we're having serious problems with that person's performance, or in the way that players or in other departments, other employees respect or don't respect that person.
Go next to Lindsay Adler.
Hey, Hal, I'm curious, how do you portion the fault for the underperformance of the players this season? Is it they've been put in the right position to succeed, the coaching staff, the players themselves? What are you seeing?
I'm sorry, because I couldn't hear the first part of that question.
How do you apportion the fault for the underperformance of the players this year?
Look, myself, Cashman, Boone, the coaches, I mean, we're responsible, right? I mean, we're in charge. So at some level, we're responsible for what's going on, but make no mistake about it. I mean, my opinion, the majority of the responsibility, whether it's the responsibility of inconsistent offense or bad base running, etc., that responsibility lies with the players. They're the ones on the field, right? They're a group of very talented professional athletes that are playing this game at the highest level in the world. They need to fix this problem. They need to fix the problem because everyone, including our fan base, rightfully so, has had enough, quite frankly. It's enough. And they know that. And, you know, you're seeing them say that. They're taking it seriously. They had a team-only meeting a couple days ago, which in my opinion is always the best type of meeting. Peers holding other peers accountable is, in my belief, the most effective type of meeting that can occur. But we all can share the blame, but the majority of the blame lies with them.
And what does that accountability look like? Do you feel like that's been an issue this year? Maybe a lack of accountability for players when things are not going right?
Well, again, that's why I think that the type of meetings that they had 2-3 days ago now, I guess it is, are just crucial because they do need to hold each other accountable. We all have peers and we all respect the opinions of those peers. And that needs to happen. It did happen. It's happened more than once. They do hold each other accountable. I seem to get the sense that the last meeting was probably the most fiery, if that's the right word, of you know, the other ones that they've had during the season. And, you know, that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
And I just have one more question, but, you know, Cashman said that the other day that if the team sinks like a stone, he'll have to consider trading players away instead of acquiring at the deadline. And so I'm curious, what is your threshold in terms of record or another criteria to determine whether this team will, you know, buy or sell at the deadline?
Yeah, I could tell you, look, Cash's job is to consider everything, right? And look at everything, but that's not a direction I'm contemplating right now or even thinking about. But, you know, we faced a situation 4 or 5 years ago where we just weren't hitting, didn't have the offense, just didn't seem like we could get what we needed to get us over the top. And the difference is we had aging players, right? Players that were kind of at the end of their career. So we did, you know, we made some trades and we got rid of some guys, but I just don't see this as that situation. These players are in their prime. They've been incredible in very recent years. And there's no reason why they can't be incredible again, offensively speaking, because they're in the prime of their careers. I mean, that's just a fact. So to answer your question, it's Cash's job to consider everything, but that's not something I'm contemplating right now.
Andy Martino, please unmute.
How understanding that you still hope to get the season turned around, how important is making the playoffs to your willingness to offer Aaron Boone another contract? You clearly respect him and want him to be your manager, but you have customers chanting fire Boone last night. And at what point would you have to consider doing something you don't want to do and changing managers after the season?
Well, that's of course that's a hypothetical, and again, these aren't things that I really want to contemplate hard on until the season's over. But making the playoffs is important, and the reason it's important is not just because we do it every year and the fans expect it. That's important, but it's important because it'll show that we've come back, because we ain't there right now. Season ends today, we're not in the playoffs. So it's very important from the standpoint that it proves that we did turn it around, and we got back ourselves into a position where we made the playoffs, and we're not there right now.
Making the playoffs essential to offering Boone another contract?
I can't answer that question right now. Yeah, it's July 1. And I'm just, I'm not going there.
Thanks.
Take a few more. Joel Sherman, go ahead.
Hal, it seems there's always a fine line between kind of optimism and delusion about a team. This has been half a season. What have you seen in 2021 that makes you believe that this team is a good team and that you weren't wrong about the evaluation coming out of spring training?
Well, I mean, I think series like the Toronto series, where our back was certainly against the wall, and playing on the road against a good team. The A series coming back after losing the first game. There's certainly been glimpses of championship caliber play, in my opinion, and performances. So, but the problem, as you well know, has been the consistency of that play.
Randy Miller, go ahead. Dan Martin, go ahead.
Here.
Go ahead, Randy. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Hal.
Hey, Randy.
When you say that you're a big fan of the analytics, and that why are you such a big fan? And also, when you say that your pro scouts still have a big say in every decision, that's not what we hear talking to scouts and people from other organizations. You hear that people tell me all the time that the Yankee scouts don't have the say as they used to. Is that concerning that you hear that? And why are you all in on the analytics?
Well, I think we're all in on the analytics because it's a big part of the game, a big part of decisions. And, we've had some acquisitions that have turned out quite well that were based almost entirely on analytics. As far as the other one, yes, that would be disturbing to hear. All I can tell you is any trade that's brought to me, any signing that's brought to me, my first question is, what do the analytics guys say? What do the pro scout guys say? Who is a yes and who is a no? Let's go around the entire table. And that's just the way we do things. So that is surprising to hear. Not saying it's not true or not, but it's certainly not true at this desk that I'm sitting at, because their opinion, the Jim Hendrys and the Tim Narings, are very important to any decision I make. That's just a fact.
Thank you.
Take two more. Dan Martin, go ahead.
Hal, you've invested a lot of money in some pitchers whose performance has declined since the sticky stuff crackdown has begun. How much of a concern is that of yours going forward, considering the investments that you've made?
Well, anytime somebody's not performing the way they have in the past or the way they're expected to, Dan, is obviously going to be concerning to me. But if you're, who are you speaking of? Let's talk specifics.
Well, Garrett Cole and Aroldis Chapman.
Well, Chapman has been struggling his last off and on dozen starts, I think, well before that began. As far as Garrett Cole, I mean, Garrett Cole's a special guy. He's obviously more than a one-pitch pitcher. His courage, his strength, his toughness. I'm just not worried about that right now based on a couple performances, Dan. Thanks. Time will tell, right? As with any pitcher or any position player. Because clearly the expectations are high. Okay.
Take a final question from Tom Merriam. Go ahead.
Hal, now that attendance, now that you can fill the stadium up fully, we haven't really seen a full house so far. What are your expectations for attendance the rest of the season, and how important is it to get back to capacity?
It's important. I mean, the last homestand, we were still dealing, even though we could be 100%, tickets go on sale weeks before. So we were still dealing with vaccination pods and having to do all that stuff. I think it's in mid-July where all the season ticket holders get back to their regular seats. And I think that homestand mid-July is going to be the first real test. It's going to be interesting. I mean, you guys up in New York, you went through hell with this thing. And I'm going to be curious to see, how readily some people come back versus others. And it would all be understandable based on what everybody went through up there. But it's great that we can now be at 100% capacity. And I think the homestand in mid-July is going to be the first big test for us.
Hal, thank you for the time. Appreciate it. Everybody during the press conference email went out, obviously, that today's game has been postponed. So Hal, thanks again. Appreciate it. Everybody, we will conclude today's Zooms now. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Máquina Deportiva, lo mejor del mundo del deporte, con análisis, comentarios e entrevistas.